Before you start, extract Packer.dff and .txt, as well as retrain.dff and .txt into your project folder. Import the DFF using the Heroes plugin by clicking File, Import. Locate the file. Remove Auto Smooth and instead choose Explicit Normals to import original smoothing. Hide the chassis_VLO. We won't need this for now. If you are going to replace the Packer truck, then you will need to keep the two miscellaneous objects. What you could do is place a transparent material on the models or select all faces and delete. The objects will still be there, just without geometry. In my case, I am replacing one of the semi-trucks, so I am fine to remove the objects entirely. Select the chassis and add an Edit Poly modifier. Go into Element Selection mode, press 5, and delete the bed. Delete the squares floating in the air. Delete the long polygons. With an object this dark, it may help to turn on flat colors. Select one of the side orange lights and select its material ID. Press F3 and you will notice other geometry is selected too. Deselect that and press F3 to exit out of wire display. Press Delete. Select the objects with the stripes on the sides and delete. Select the remaining junk that we don't want. We'll keep the plate for later. Go into Vertex Selection mode, press 1, and merge the uneven sides of the rear part of the chassis frame into the rear vertices like so. Then select the overlapping vertices and weld to remove the double vertex. To fix the gap in the frame, go into Border Selection mode, press 3, and select the gaps. Deselect the unwanted edges by going into Edge Selection mode. Press Bridge. Repeat for the other side. Select the inner sides of the frame and bridge the two sides. Collapse on the X-axis. Turn the poly selection into vertex selection by control-clicking Vertex Selection mode. Merge into any of the sides. Select Frame by Element and control-click Vertex Selection mode. Weld vertices at 0.001 threshold to clear out any overlapping vertices. Select Frame by Element and set materials to ID1. Add a Unwrap UVW modifier. Select the two rear bent faces and do a planar projection in Z. Do the same for the other two top faces and the four bottom faces. View Vehicle Generic Texture in UV Editor. Select the whole bottom and the bent part of the rear end of the frame. Position it at the top left corner of the undercarriage texture. Rotate 90 degrees and make it so the gray lines appear on both sides of the mesh. Do the same for the upper two faces. Select the rest of the UVs and do a planar projection in X. Split it apart in two halves. Move the UVs into the same place as the rest. Exit out of UV Editor. Bridge the gap underneath the frame. Turn on Snaps and right-click the Snaps button. Head into Options and enable Axis Constraints. Pull the Y-axis and drop at the corner of the frame. Turn off Axis Constraints and Snaps. Extrude the polygon 0.1 meter. Click the plus icon and then select the extruded sides. Extrude them 0.75 meters. Press Confirm. Select all faces of the box and add an Unwrap UVW modifier. Do a planar projection in Y-axis. View Vehicle Generic Texture in UV Editor. The vertical metallic gradient in the bottom right looks fine. We don't want the black part though. Add an Edit Poly to Stack. Grab the Y coordinate from the rear polygon and copy to clipboard. Disable flat colors in viewport settings. Create a cylinder with a radius of 0.075. Height of 0.025. 8 sides. And rotate it 90 degrees and paste the Y coordinate. Go back in the box that you just made and grab the Z coordinate. Paste in the cylinder. Move the cylinder to 1.1 in X-axis. Create 2 instances and move them by 0.25 intervals in X-axis. Inset 0.01 in the center face. Click the plus icon to repeat and collapse the poly. Click the back side of the cylinder and delete as it won't be seen. Select the center vertex and then Control-click Polygon Selection Mode. Bevel -0.005 in both value fields. Set the center face to Material ID 12 and the rest to ID 1. Set the center face to Smoothing ID 1. Invert selection with Ctrl-I and Auto Smooth at 65 degrees. Deselect your polygons. Press M to open Material Editor. Click the eyedropper icon and then click your chassis. Select your cylinders and apply the multi-material that you just grabbed. Select one object and add an Unwrap UVW modifier. Do a planar projection in the Y-axis. View the vehicle light's texture in UV Editor. Move and scale the UV so that it fits within the red light in the bottom center. Move the rest of the UV into the same part as the box the light is attached to. View Vehicle Generic in UV Editor. Reduce the UV height and place it somewhere in the center of that part. Add an Edit Poly modifier. Select the 2 other cylinders and make them unique. Select the original cylinder and attach the 2 other ones. Move the object pivot to 0 in X-axis and add a Symmetry modifier. Add an Edit Poly modifier. Select the center faces of the left lights and set their Material ID to 10. Enable Axis Constraints and select your chassis. Then select the rear plate object. Pull the Y-axis and let go at the corner of the metal bar. Try and center the plate to the bar. Move it out just a bit to avoid Z-fighting issues. Select the chassis and attach the lights. Select all vertices part of the metallic box, and deselect the 2 vertices part of the frame. Enable Axis Constraints with Vertex Snap enabled. Pull the corner of the box and let go at the corner of the frame. If desired, you could move the box even closer to the wheels, but I'm fine with its current position. Because this is a much lighter truck than, for example, road train, we can cut down the size of the fuel tank a bit. Select the vertices and press F12 for Type and Transform Floater. In Y-type 0.5. Select the vertices of the frame's rear end, and move by 3.5 meters in y-axis. Select the dummies and move the same amount. Select the rear back axis vertices and move back minus 0.1 in y-axis. This will space the wheels out a little more. Select the dummies and move the same amount. Move the taillight's dummy and snap to the center vertex of the outer right light. Clone the dummy and name it taillights 2. Snap it to the inner right light. Because we have removed a good half of the truck's length, we may want to move the pivot closer to the center. Move it 2.3 m in y-axis, and also move the 2 chassis dummies by pressing "Don't affect children." The same needs to be done for the collision later. Select the 4 backside polygons of the block behind the cab. The bottom part has the wrong material ID. Set material ID 4. Add an unwrap UVW modifier and move the left UV island to roughly where the right UV island is located. Add an edit poly modifier. The only things left to do is add a wire output panel, fix a few issues, and modify the level of detail variant and the collision. Import our dtrain.dff and move it aside. Select the red or blue planes and then select their material ID. Deselect any unwanted polygons. Select the small wire output. Detach and place it on the intended truck. Detach the trailer hitch. Parent the miscellaneous _a dummy to the hitch. Delete road train. Select the wire output box and set its material ID to 1. Select the wires and set their material ID to 19. Grab the wire object material and copy. Grab your truck's chassis material and set it to have 19 IDs. Paste the material into the 19th slot. Apply the multi-material to your wire object and then attach to the chassis. The reason you're changing material IDs is that if you didn't do this, then your model would end up having all of Roadtrain's materials in its model, which would add bloat to the file. Move the trailer hitch into place. If you press F4, it should be exceeding a small portion of the area where the frame starts to bend down. Change the miscellaneous _a dummy to be parented to the Packer dummy. This is where the trailer connects. Select the hitch polygons and make their material ID 1. Apply your multi-material to the hitch. Attach the hitch to the chassis. Due to an issue with the Heroes plugin, you will need to change the material ID of the headlight glass. Set to ID 18. In Material Editor, change ID 18 to ID 6. And ID 6 to ID 18. This ensures the glass is rendered last. Add a X-form modifier to your wheel and press R for scale. Head into Gizmo level in the modifier. Press F12 and type 111%. Select the 2 wheel axes and duplicate their faces, and then flip their normals, or else they will be invisible when lights turn on. It's time to modify the level of detail model, VLO. Isolate selection. Remove the unwanted polygons. Pull the vertices of the chassis forwards to fit roughly around the high detail variant. It does not have to be exact. Move the pivot 2.3 meters forwards. Move Packer dummy to 0, 0, 0. Select everything and export to DFF. Click File, Export, and choose DFF. The default export settings are fine. It's time to modify the collision. Use collision IO from CAM's or Goldfish's scripts. Skip boundings. Open collision file and locate Packer.dff. Vehicle collisions are embedded in their DFF. Press Open. Move Packer dummy 2.3 meters forwards to line it up with the collisions. Select CM_Packer and delete the unwanted polygons. Press F3 and reduce the length of the collision by pulling the vertices towards the cab. Adjust the Z position of the bed polygon so that it's right below the trailer hitch. Move the pivot of the collision mesh and shadow mesh 2.3 m forwards in Y-axis. Select all collision objects and move 2.3 meters backwards using F12. Reset X-form for the two meshes to apply the pivot placement. Clean up the shadow mesh. Select that and the chassis and isolate selection. Move Packer dummy back to 0. When done, exit out of isolated mode. Remove the excess collision spheres. Reduce the radius of the spheres at the cab. 0.6 for the smaller and 0.8 for the larger ones. Move the larger ones backwards and up a bit, and the same for the smaller ones. As for the spheres around the bed, remove one of the rear spheres. Make the other sphere 0.5 and position it somewhere around the middle of the back end. Delete the spheres on the left side. Make the spheres on the right side a radius of 0.5. Select all right spheres. Go into Tools menu and select Array. Click Preview. In the top section, click Move and type -3.1 in X-axis. Type of object needs to be instance. Set to 1D and the count to 3. Select the bed spheres and move down -0.1 by pressing F12. Select all of the Packer elements and hide. In Collision IO, type Packer for the name. Pick your collision mesh and shadow mesh. Select your shadow and collision meshes as well as the spheres. Export collision in name collision, call.call. Create a box. Center it to scene. The size doesn't matter. Add a UVW map modifier and edit poly modifier. Apply a standard material to your box. Open DFF IO. In Export DFF Rollout, click Select Collision. Locate the collision you just exported. Export DFF and name it callcar. Open callcar.dff in RW Analyze. Scroll down to the bottom and extract the bottom blue extension. Name it call without any file extensions. Open your custom Packer DFF. Import the call file that you extracted just before. Save. Extract RD train pipe 64 from rdtrain.txt and add to packer.txt. Load the files into your mod loader and test on MTA. I am replacing RD train. A few things to note is that the door animation will look a bit off. The height of the hitch is also lower than other trucks, meaning trailers might sink a bit lower than usually. You could fix this by creating a trailer model specifically designed for this truck.